Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for that. I'm glad somebody was awake. We're going to go ahead and start as a subcommittee. Let me call to order the Business and Professions Committee. We will begin as a subcommittee, and I do believe we have an author. Mr. Lackey, if you'd like to approach, please. Members, this is file item number 6, AB 2066.
Good morning. Well, good morning, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to present AB 2066, which is an important bill for consumer transparency. I want to start by stating that I'll be accepting the committee's suggested amendments to have the LAO help calculate the estimate. The bill requires the California Energy Commission to calculate an estimate of the per gallon cost of California's cap and trade program that is being added to the gasoline and diesel fuel prices. This estimate would then be required to be placed on signs at gas stations under current law, which are required to display state and federal excise tax and fees. A 2016 analysis by the LAO estimates that compliance with cap and trade is adding about 11 cents per gallon for gasoline and 14 cents for diesel fuel. It also appears that these costs are passed on to consumers. The focus of this bill is not in any way meant to criticize the cap and trade program, but is solely focused on promoting more information to consumers. California has a strong history of sharing with consumers the government costs they are incurring. For example, fees required by law for new tire purchases are clearly shown on the customer receipts. The same is true for mattress recycling fees and many other state-run programs. For my district, where nearly 100,000 drivers commute long distances into Los Angeles, gas prices make up a large portion of family budgets. Disclosing the extra costs they pay at the pump is good policy and the most logical place to disclose them to consumers. In 2015, when California became the first state in the country to require fuel production purchases emission credits, there was uncertainty about what effect it would have on gas and diesel prices. Now, with better information, we can more accurately understand the costs that are being placed on motorists. Both the LAO and Oil Price Information Service have been able to accurately estimate the cost using the latest information from carbon price auctions. If passed into law, this would not be difficult to implement and could be done at a very reasonable cost to the state. With me to provide some testimony is Jay McKeeman from the California Independent Oil Marketers Association.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Again, I'm Jay McKeeman with the California Independent Oil Marketers Association. We call ourselves local oil. We get product from the state refineries and transport it to consumers, whether it's in a service station, a farm, a construction site, or an industrial location. We are supportive of this measure, even though it presents another obligation on our membership in terms of having signage to accurately display this information. We are fully supportive of the measure because we think consumers need to know about this cost that is layered into the price of fuel in California. It's a simple requirement. It doesn't require a lot of extra energy or activity to post the requirement. We do have an amendment in the bill that does say that it's an annual posting. That helps us a lot, and we're very supportive and think it's a good measure. Ask for your aye vote.
Thank you for your testimony and support. Let me ask for additional testimony and support.
Mike Rogie with California Manufacturers and Technology Association in support.
Thank you. Additional testimony and support.
Marty Fisher, California Chamber of Commerce, also in support.
Thank you. Additional testimony and support. Hearing and seeing none, let me ask for testimony in opposition. Hearing and seeing none, let me turn it to members on the dais for questions. Do we have questions from the dais? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Lackey, thank you for accepting the committee amendments. I do see this as a transparency bill, and so I do appreciate you bringing this measure before us. Once we establish quorum, we'll go ahead and take this item up for a vote at that time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, members, let's move on to Mr. Medina's bill. File item number 14, AB 2581. Mr. Medina will be hearing this as a subcommittee. Once we establish quorum, we will go ahead and take the measure up for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I want to start by accepting the committee amendments, which are outlined in the analysis. Today, we have an opportunity to help thousands of California students harmed by the closure of Corinthian campuses with AB 2581. AB 2581 provides accessible relief through local organizations to help students complete the loan forgiveness and tuition recovery process. It restores the years of Cal Grant eligibility for students impacted by the closure of Heald colleges and authorizes state licensing boards to waive non-substantive licensing requirements for students who meet educational requirements. Our goal is to make these students financially and educationally whole. Students have been waiting for relief since the school's closures, which occurred almost exactly a year ago. They need our help now. Today, I'm joined by Angela Perry with Public Advocates to speak about the importance of legal assistance.
Thank you. Please, testimony and support.
My name is Angela Perry. I'm with Public Advocates, as Assemblymember Medina said. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Corinthian students who have been irreparably harmed by the closure of Corinthian colleges. And in the 10 months that have passed since the closure, unfortunately, these students have not received the federal or state aid that they are rightfully entitled to. Students who borrowed federal student loans are able to have those loans discharged if they don't transfer their credits into a comparable program elsewhere. And California students who paid into the state insurance fund for such students, the Student Tuition Recovery Fund, or STRIF, which you'll heard thrown around a lot, they can benefit from further relief. In order to navigate the confusing paths to this relief, however, students have to fill out a myriad of forms. They have to figure out complex legal fees and understand how to argue a fraud case, how to navigate paperwork that they don't understand, things that they're just not equipped to do. Without the aid, students have struggled to take advantage of the options available, as evidenced by the fact that nearly 10 months after Corinthians closed, only 5.8% of the students who took out loans to attend Corinthian have applied for discharge, and only 7% of the affected Everest and Wyotech students that the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education has met with have been able to apply for STRIF relief or have applied for STRIF relief. There's no evidence that these students are forgoing relief because they don't need it. Even students who transferred their credits are still eligible for a type of relief from the federal government. So there is relief available to all of these students. However, many eligible students don't receive relief because the process for determining eligibility is complex. Many borrowers are eligible for both closed school and borrower defense discharges, and the type of discharge that would give them the most benefit is almost impossible for a layperson to determine. AB 2586 would facilitate students' access to relief by providing funding to nonprofit organizations that can conduct the on-the-ground research, outreach, and provide the assistance that students need. Legal aid organizations in California are particularly well positioned to reach out to these affected students because they already work widely within the communities that are affected. Low income, students of color, first-time college attendees, students later in life that are going back to school. These are people that are already in touch with legal aid organizations because those are the organizations that serve them. Yet despite current efforts, legal aid providers have been overwhelmed by the demand that greatly outstrips their ability to serve Corinthian students. there are too many Corinthian students and not enough resources for legal aid assistance. These legal aid offices are not just lawyers. They are staffers. They are assistants. They're paralegals. They're people, they're intake officers that can help provide assistance to students beyond just the legal services, but just helping them navigate the process, figuring out what is the best option for them. Those are the services that are so essential and can only be found in these legal aid offices. With that, I offer my strong support for AB 2586 or 2581, and I defer to my colleague.
Thank you. Additional testimony and support, please.
Mr. Chairman, members, Ed Howard on behalf of the Center for Public Interest Law, the Children's Advocacy Institute, and the Veterans Legal Clinic, all at the University of San Diego School of Law. There's an additional reason beyond the mere complexity as to why these particular students need help. Corinthian specifically targeted, as a part of its fraudulent enterprise, veterans, students of color, those who are economically disadvantaged, and immigrants. Recently, ProPublica published a lot of the discovery that the Attorney General had obtained during its lawsuit, and it underscores the need for the state to reach out to these particular students. This is I wasn't smart enough, Mr. Chairman and members, to bring copies, but this is a document that was part of a PowerPoint presentation provided to Corinthian recruiters. And this says, summary of insights about our prospects. And the box here is low self-esteem, few base hits, stuck, unable to see and plan well for the future, few people in their lives who care about them, isolated, etc. So these were the kinds of people that were targeted, and targeted successfully by this fraudulent business enterprise. They need help. By definition, they are largely uneducated. By definition, they were people with few people in their lives who care about them. And as your analysis correctly observes, applying for loan forgiveness would require an understanding of contract, tort, or unfair practices statutes, skills and knowledge inaccessible to most Corinthian students, quoting from the Attorney General. One final observation, Mr. Chairman and members, about the importance of this. It is a regrettable irony that Corinthian is able to claim bankruptcy protection for its debts and relief. None of its victims will be able to claim bankruptcy protection for their debts. They need our help. I respectfully ask for your vote.
Thank you. Additional testimony and support.
Yes, I am Matthew LaRock with the Institute for College Access and Success. I'm here to echo the support of folks who have provided prior testimony. Financial relief is available to these students, as we've heard, through both federal law, through loan discharges, as well as through the state-run Student Tuition Recovery Fund. Unfortunately, we know that very students who are eligible have yet to receive this assistance, and this bill would facilitate students' access to relief by providing that very important funding to nonprofit organizations that can actually do outreach and actually connect with these students. And for these reasons, we strongly urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Robert Sumner on behalf of Attorney General Kamala Harris, here in strong support.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Additional testimony and support. Hearing and seeing none, let's move to testimony in opposition. Hearing and seeing none, let me turn it to members on the dais for questions. Ms. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm probably going to sound like a bit of a broken record. And I appreciate that last year we actually co-authored together very similar legislation. I was sorry that the governor did not support it. And this came through higher education, where, as I mentioned there, I laid off the bill intentionally. I don't abstain very often, but I did intentionally because of the issue of whether or not there really is a need to fund legal services. I don't believe there's a debate that it is very helpful to students and students need legal assistance. And I do believe that. I think the shortage is they're not notified. The outreach is really what they need. There are attorneys out there who will do this for free. And when this bill came up last year, I contacted some of the major law firms in California, the big ones that have pro bono departments. They look for these types of cases for their attorneys to meet both pro bono hours and their own professional obligations to do pro bono work. And I said, am I wrong? Is there not enough of you out there? If you just got connected with the legal aid organizations, you would do this? And they said, absolutely. We do these cases. We're ready to do them for free. So I do question that there is a shortage of pro bono work that can be done. I think there needs to be a better job on behalf of the Bureau of Post-Secondary Education, the Attorney General's office, who just spoke in support, and even this legislature on making sure that we are connecting the students with that support. And it is of great concern that we are putting $1.3 million into lawyers who will do it for free and who are out there and who could do it very well. So I strongly encourage us to instead put the resources into connecting the students not only with the legal aid organizations that already partner with law firms. If they don't have enough attorneys in their specific legal organization, they have law firms that they work with who are happy to find attorneys to do that, because that 1.3 really should go directly to the students and helping them in other ways. So I'm going to continue to lay off, and it is in hopes that I hope it does come to the floor. I hope it's in a way that is more likely to get signed by the governor, and who knows what that is. But I do think this is one of the central reasons, he said so in his veto message, that it may be lined up for failure on the desk, and that we can fix that, and I think it would be better. So I applaud you for continuing to be committed to these students. I agree with so many of the provisions of the bill. I hope when it comes to the floor we can fix this point, and I look forward to hopefully getting to vote for it then.
Okay. Additional questions? Okay. Hopefully there's a question. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Medina, if this moves forward and the governor does end up signing it and the state gets involved in this, does the state have any recourse against the operators of Corinthian to get some of that money back from the people that actually caused the problem in the first place?
It's my understanding, just what I read in the paper, and I'll defer, that the state is trying to get some of that money back, but I'll defer to the experts.
The state's trying. The honest answer, Assemblymember, is Corinthian is in bankruptcy.
Right. Okay.
And so in bankruptcy, of course, there's a priority of debtors. I don't know in all candor where the state would fall. I'm not a bankruptcy attorney. I only know law that's not particularly useful. But I don't know where it would fall. My guess is the ability of the state to recoup it is remote.
Remote. Okay. So you're not following the bankruptcy part of the case close enough to know who's being taken care of first. As far
in all candor, Assemblymember, I'm not. I will mention one thing, however, and it bleeds a little bit into Assemblymember Baker's thoughtful comment. This is a very good investment. If you think about the folk who are going to benefit by having their loans discharged, and you think about the people who were targeted by Corinthian, these are people right on the margins of public assistance and a whole bunch of other public programs, by definition. And the ability to make sure that they are not themselves crippled by debt, thrown into debt collection, the inability, because now if your credit is ruined, you can't get an apartment, you can't get a job. All of those things are all as a consequence of what will happen to these folk. And so in terms of keeping these folk away from our safety net, because they're really close to it right now, it's a really good investment. But your points are very thoughtful, Assemblymember Baker, but it's a good investment.
I will say, as a final comment, your PowerPoint was very compelling, so thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Additional questions from members of the dais? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Medina, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you, Chair Salas. In closing, I think our help to Corinthian students is overdue. As we said at the beginning, it's been over a year. I think Ms. Baker's point of getting the information out there is very well taken, and we will do everything we can to make sure that we do everything to communicate with students. We will be continuing to be in dialogue with the governor so that we get a different result this year. But I think it's important that we do provide legal access. I've heard from students in my district, from Harvard-trained attorneys, just how difficult the process really is. So with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Medina. Thank you for that, for accepting the committee amendments as well. We see this measure as helping make the students whole with the resources to assist the students, and I believe we are one member short of quorum. Once we establish quorum, we will take a vote on your measure. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to, I believe, Mr. Nazarian. Assemblymember Nazarian was here next. Mr. Nazarian will be presenting on file item number 18, AB 2790.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. First and foremost, I'd like to take the suggested committee amendments. AB 2790, as proposed to be amended, requires the California Research Bureau to conduct a study on the necessity and feasibility of statewide licensure for taxicab drivers. Unlike other options, taxis are the only type of transportation for hire that can provide service at the curb. Because the services are regulated locally at city and county levels, taxicab owners and drivers face a myriad of regulations that vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, including among neighboring cities and counties. Consequently, taxicab operators that work in various cities and or counties are often subjected to multiple levels of regulation and licensure requirements. Typically, regulations are more extensive in larger cities, while less extensive in smaller cities. Just in the city of Los Angeles alone, the taxicab industry faces over 500 different regulations. By requiring the CRB to conduct a study on the necessity and feasibility of the statewide licensure, AB 2790 will help transit providers and regulators attain valuable data for the development of future and more efficient regulations. And with that, I asked for your aye vote when you have a quorum.
Thank you, Assemblymember Nazarian. Let me ask for testimony and support. Okay. Hearing and seeing none, let me ask for testimony in opposition. Hearing and seeing none, let me turn it to members on the dais for questions. Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Nazarian, thank you for taking the committee's amendments. When we establish a quorum, we'll take a vote. Do see this as you trying to bring some conformity throughout the entire state, and I believe the California Research Bureau will help address some of those. I know the legislature in the past, along with some of the reports, have looked at this, and so we look to build upon what you originally introduced, take the data that we received from the Research Bureau, and hopefully move forward with something productive.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Assemblymember Cooley, thank you for joining us. Members, this is file item number 16, AB 2679.
Colleagues, thank you. I'm pleased to be presenting AB 2679. This bill actually builds upon important work done in this committee last session. As we started what became the strikingly successful medical marijuana conversation as a collaboration, I brought you a bill last year which had as its central idea that there should be one agency at the state level involved in medical marijuana that was kind of driving the train. Multiple agencies would be involved, but one agency would be on top, and that is in fact the approach that was taken. That strategy supports accountability because we in the legislature, if we want to have any questions answered, we have one agency principally we go to. This bill, AB 2679, builds on that policy decision which was made in this committee 1 year ago. The Enforcement Bureau, the Bureau of Medical Marijuana, has a lot of things as they implement the new law. They will develop a reporting system, transparency. This bill builds on that requirement for reporting and adds a few new elements. They will need to report on the number of things, including how many licenses have been issued, renewed, denied, suspended, or revoked. So we will have a more clear sense of what's actually happening in the administration of this law as affects persons seeking licensure. They will also, this will get us into the number of appeals of denial of state licensure or other disciplinary actions, the number of complaints about licensees submitted to the Bureau by the public. It will also expand the California Medical Marijuana Research Program within the University of California to include its studies, the effects of marijuana on a person's motor skills. So really, this bill is just about expanding accountability, information, knowing how the new law gets implemented, and on that important issue of motor skills, expanding our level of information out of this research program that's been a part of the UC since about 2000. I request your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Cooley. Let me ask for testimony in support. Hearing and seeing none, let me ask for testimony in opposition. Hearing and seeing none, let me turn it to members on the dais. Hearing and seeing no questions. Thank you, Mr. Cooley.
Thank you very much.
There is a question. Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood is in agreement.
Thank you.
So let me just say, Mr. Cooley, this bill does increase reporting requirements, does bring that accountability. I know you were really big on accountability and making sure that that is there. So thank you for your measure. I don't know if you'd like to close.
I request your aye vote in due course. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cooley. We will take a vote once we establish quorum. I believe we are still one member short. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move to Ms. Gonzalez. And Ms. Gonzalez has two measures before us, file item number 5, AB 2025, and file item number 17, AB 2699. Ms. Gonzalez, please, which bill will you proceed on first?